Welcome back to The Best Years. For most of us, taking a vacation means a week or two of adventure or relaxation. Our next guests, George Smith and Janet Murphy, spent an incredible 17 years sailing around the world on their 31-foot boat. George, Janet, welcome to The Best Years.
Thank you. It's nice to be here.
Yes, thank you.
George, what made you decide to embark on this amazing journey?
Well, there was actually no decision involved. My mother tells me that ever since I was a little kid, I was interested in boats. And when I finally got out of graduate school, the first thing I did was to buy a boat before going to sleep. And always wanted to sail around the world. And it wasn't until I was 56 years old that I finally got around to starting off.
And what an incredible trip you had. And Janet, living on a 31-foot sailboat, what is that like for long stretches at a time?
It's excellent, actually. We both get along very well together. I take care of all of the provisioning and getting the boat prepared. It's small. We have 2 settees. We're only about 8 foot wide. So you have to get used to living close together and, you know, climbing over each other when you want to go to the forward part of the boat.
You have to be very organized as well.
You have to be very organized. You can't have anything laying around. No, everything is all in its bins and right where it should be, so you can find anything at a moment's notice.
Everything has to be shipshape and
Exactly.
planning too with the meals.
Right. George is the chef, so he plans the meals.
Now, with just 2 people on board, you made some transatlantic crossings. How were you able to do that? What were your watches like?
Well, we had the normal naval system of 4 hours on, 4 hours off, with a dog watch between 4 o'clock and 8 o'clock. Namely, instead of a 4-hour, there were 2-hour shifts, so that you didn't get the same shift every day. And you get very used to it when you're out there for 3 weeks at a time. You get to wave to one another.
Going on
And
walks and
going
going to
off.
sleep.
Yeah.
And Janet, what did you do to stay in touch in order to be safe so
Well,
people would know where you were?
We're both ham radio operators. We're extra class ham radio operators, and I was the communicator, so I stayed in, you know, got on the radio and checked in with all the different nets that are out there, and they get your position and they know just where you are, and they actually have your address, and if there's a problem, they can even call home about that. So, and we also kept in touch with friends that way on the ham radio.
And George, were there any dangerous moments? Did you run into any storms where it was a little scary?
Well, the first real storm that we ran into was our first crossing of the Atlantic. We sailed to Bermuda, and then from Bermuda to the Azores, we had a rather severe gale for 3 days running with 15 or so foot seas and lots of wind. And we got through that with no problem. We had a very good boat that we had custom built for this trip, by the way. And after going through that, we thought, well, that wasn't too bad. If that's all we're going to get, we can keep going.
But what was that like? I mean, were you able to sleep at all during that time, or were you just up the whole time?
No, you're able to sleep. Our bunks in the main cabin had side curtains to them, so you could crawl in there and you'd be, you couldn't get tossed out one way or the other. So you could go through very rough seas and sleep very nicely, and you get used to it after a while.
Except for the waves that were washing over the top of the deck and slamming against the boat, and you're sitting on the cabin sole, scared to death. You know, it's like,
that's what I'm asking.
Yeah,
it
really,
had to be frightening.
It was, and but we stayed in, kept the boards in, and the self-steering did most of the work, because if we opened the hatch, the water would have been down below. So
Sure.
we didn't do that.
And Janet, throughout your 17-year journey, you had an opportunity to visit many different cultures. It's a lot of time to cover, but what are a couple of the highlights from your trip?
Well, actually, we both love nature, and when we go ashore, you know, I'm always looking for the birds because I'm a bird watcher, and animals that are in the various countries, and we meet the people and learn their cultures. And since I'm an ex-teacher, I used to try to get into as many classrooms as I can. And I spent some time in a Fijian classroom, and I was just amazed at all the things they do there. They teach English, they have English on their storyboards, and it was wonderful getting with the children, and they loved it. They all wanted to be photographed.
And George, you're both in your 70s now. Are you still sailing?
Oh yes, we still have APOGEE stocked behind our house. Of course, we don't cross oceans anymore. And
that's for sure.
Recently just been a day sailor in Barnegat Bay, but we have thoughts of doing some coastal cruising anyway.
But sailing's an activity that's great for older adults to be involved with.
No problem.
And are you interested still in doing some transatlantic crossings, or are you happy to stay home too, closer to home?
Yeah, no more transatlantic crossings.
And what's great about sailing? I sail a little bit myself, and I know how I feel about being out on the water. What do you like so much about sailing that you would spend so many years doing it?
Well, it's actually relaxing. You're getting away from the world. You sit out there and you have all this time, to yourself, and you can read, and you don't have any obligations except taking care of the ship.
George, how about for you? What do you feel like when you're out on the water?
Well, it's a different world. You're out there all by yourself. No other boats around. In fact, when we sailed from the Galapagos to Marquesas, we didn't see a single boat on the whole trip. And things like, sunrises and sunsets without any land or civilization around are amazing. You just can't capture that on land.
And the stars
and
too.
The star, I was going to say
yes.
the sky and the stars, and everything is just.
Now, did you do any celestial navigation? Do you know how to do that?
Yes, we started out with 2 sextants aboard. This is before GPS, even before sat-nav came about. But that's not too much of a problem.
Well, you both had such an incredible journey. We're glad you're home safe and cruising around the waters of the Barnegat Bay. George Smith, Janet Murphy, thank you so much for being on The Best Years today.
Thank you for having us.
Welcome.
You're welcome. When we return, we'll learn how a new Spanish language magazine is helping Ocean County seniors stay connected to each other and their community. Stay tuned.